Protests have marked 10 years since the first prisoners were sent to America's most controversial prison, Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. Barack Obama's promise on his first day in office to close it remains unfulfilled and never rang more hollow than last month when he signed a new law allowing the indefinite detention of terror suspects. RT's Laura Smith reports.
10015!
Today's probably just another day for the inmates of Guantanamo Bay. They may not even know that people around the world are campaigning for them. But as far afield as London, demonstrations are held to demand the release of the 171 men still held without trial in the Cuban camp after 10 years. One of those men is Shaka Armour, who's earned the dubious distinction of being the last British resident held in Guantanamo. He was in Afghanistan on 9/11, he says, doing charity work, digging wells and building a girls' school in Kabul. When the US invasion began, Armour went into hiding from an increasingly wary Northern Alliance. But his freedom didn't last. Shaka's supporters maintain he was sold for a bounty.
He went into the hands of the Northern Alliance, who were warlords basically, and he actually thought, oh, the Americans, thank goodness, he will save me from the torture that he'd had, months of torture by then. But no, he was transported to Guantanamo.
And there he has remained, despite President Obama's original election pledge to close Guantanamo altogether, despite being cleared for release, and despite being a legal permanent resident in the UK with a family here in London, which includes one son he's never even seen. And far from moving closer to being freed, Shaka's supporters see worrying developments in the US's attitude to extrajudicial detention. Obama recently signed the National Defense Authorization Act, which places domestic terror investigations into the hands of the military and extends a ban on transferring prisoners out of Guantanamo.
I'm very sorry indeed that President Obama, for reasons of lack of political will, or he would say a complete inability to deliver, has not lived up to that promise. And indeed, he is now proposing to book American citizens into trials in military commissions, which are very far from being fair trials with due process.
The British government has requested the release of Armour, but there's been no movement on the case since 2007. Meanwhile, as his family grows up without him, he lives out his life in a tiny windowless cell, not knowing whether he can ever expect to be released. Laura Smith, RT, London.